Hello again. My name is Austin Dean, and I'm a junior studying integrated marketing communications. I am one of Doc's students, and as I told you Wednesday night, I still haven't gotten a grade or a check from Samir, so no good words still. But there's hope. So I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Joe Berger. Joe Berger is a circulation and marketing consultant based in Chicago. Joe's father was a magazine wholesaler, so he grew up surrounded by books, magazines, and out-of-state newspapers. In the magazine world, he's worked for a diverse spectrum of publishers, ranging from Outside Magazine, Ziff Davis, and The Knot Weddings. Joe currently represents a group of small to medium-sized publishers in categories such as hunting and fishing, regional, city and state, and children's entertainment. Joe is married to Valerie, a B2B publisher, and they have two daughters. One of them is also working for a magazine. I think he has more than $2. Mr. Joe Berger.
Good morning, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today and appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think this is my fourth ACT conference, first time I've been asked to speak. And as it was mentioned, I am a newsstand publishing, marketing, and sales consultant and specialize obviously in newsstand sales distribution. And I know enough about subscription and audience development and those sorts of things to be what is usually called dangerous. And like Scott, probably over the years I've made hundreds, perhaps thousands of presentations to very small groups of people, a single wholesaler standing over a ramp scanner or a room full of very bored lawyers or something along those lines, but never in a room this size with an audience like this. Unlike Scott, however, you're not naked, you're just in your underwear. So in any event, when Samir asked me to do this presentation, one of the things he asked me to do was to talk about what does a publisher who is going on the newsstand need to know if they're going to launch their magazine and put it on the newsstand. So my thinking was, seeing as how we're at the Meek School of Journalism, let's treat this like we're cub reporters, and we've got the 5 W questions we have to ask and the 1 H, and see what we can come up with. So let's do that. I think I just killed it. I killed the newsstand. What did I do? I thought you were going to do it, Bo.
You really killed the newsstand. Where are you? No? Well, when everything else fails, go to the internet.
Yes, view.
I think you just touched the arrows.
Could be. Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Just the arrows.
Okay. So let's start with this. So we've seen all of this before, right? You know, if you do put all your money together, you've got your magazine, you're ready to launch it, and your family is going to say, yeah, but sales are way down. Why do you want to do this? And every week it seems like there's another article that's out there somewhere in the web, somewhere in some newsletter about how terrible sales are. And frequently I'm told, this is my future. It's going to be empty big box stores or 2-foot mainline racks. I actually had a picture of a Walgreens, which in Chicago used to be sort of the go-to place for magazines on the newsstand. And I was just in one downtown, and the new mainline in this new Walgreens store is 2 feet wide. And certainly that is disturbing and something that you want to try to avoid. This is our future, right? My favorite word, but. Because there's always a but somewhere. This is still a really good way for you to generate subscriptions, because you're asking somebody to go and pay full freight for your magazine, and if they really like it, they're going to subscribe. They may fill out the card, they may go online. However they do it, they're going to do it. And single copy sales are still a very good way to get your subscriber base up. You can make money, and yesterday Herbert gave us a really good example of how hard it is to make money on the newsstand. But if you watch what you're doing, you can do it. And on top of that, again, whether or not you're going to be an AAM audited title or if you're just going to write something up and give it to your advertisers, this is a way for you to tell people, we've got people who are going out and buying our magazine and paying a lot of money for it, and that means that these are really dedicated and readers who really want to do this. Now, this is actually a newsstand in Australia, but newsstands are public. They're visible. People still do go to shop. For all the problems that retailers have today, people are still going out. We're not going to hide in our houses. We're not going to just, press buy on Amazon all day long. We are going to go out and get stuff. And magazines are still at the newsstand, and it's a very visible and public way to do it. And this is one of my favorite reasons why you want to go on the newsstand, because if you have a really good cover, or really good cover content, and if you also happen to have maybe your cover image is of somebody who's got a couple of million followers on Twitter, who has a sense of play to their lives. This happened about 2 years ago. Miley Cyrus came up with her new look, her new album. She was on the cover of Cosmo. She told her people to go out and mess around with the newsstand, and that's what they did. She sold a lot of copies. So let's ask that first question as a cub reporter. And the first question, of course, is who? And the first question you should ask yourself if you're launching your magazine, or maybe if you're reorganizing how you're going to do your publishing company, is who is going to manage your newsstand sales? And if you happen to have a circulation staff, look under the desk, because that's probably where they're hiding. Could be. But find that person, pull them out from underneath the desk, and give them the job, and give them the tools and the budget and the responsibility and the empowerment to do the job that they're supposed to do. In other words, stop second-guessing us. Ask yourself, who's going to manage your newsstand sales? We've had 30 years, 20 years of contraction and consolidation in our industry, but there are still a lot of players involved. And the question you have to ask yourself is, how are you going to get onto the newsstand? If you're a small regional publication, you may not need a national distributor like Curtis or Comag or Time Inc. Retail. You may just want to talk to the folks at TNG or Hudson, depending on where in the country your magazine is based. You just may want to go direct. Maybe you only want to be in the bookstore market, so you're going to want to talk to Ingram or Media Solutions. Maybe you only want to be in something really exclusive like Whole Foods or Sprouts, and you want to talk to one source. Figure out where you want to go and who you want to talk to and who is going to handle this for you. Because you are going to have to partner with somebody, and you want to get to know them. Who's going to manage your newsstand finances? Bo, I picked this picture for you. Because we don't do business like that anymore. But we are a piece of the business, and we have our own unique rules and ways that we do things. And you're going to want to understand what it is you're going to do. And the person who handles your finances also has to understand that. And lastly, you want to ask yourself the question, who is your competition? Because as unique as you may think your editorial is, the chances are somebody has something out there that might be it. And this is the regional bridal market in Chicago, 5 titles. I've launched 3 of them. And each one has its own unique style. It has its own unique retail positioning, where they are, where they go out, how often they print. And one of them actually doesn't even go very much on the newsstand. But there's 5 out there, so if you want to be number 6, you need to know who these people are. What's the next question you're going to ask? What? And this is something that surprises me after all the years that I've done this. What are your production costs? And I ask many new publishers that come to me, what are your production costs? And I get a lot of hemina. I'm not really sure. You really should know. I'm surprised by that. You want to ask yourself, what's your production cycle? Earlier, Scott was mentioning the fact that we need to start thinking about 2017, what we're going to do, what we're going to promote. This summer, really starting next month and the month after, is when people start looking for production schedules. I have to confess that I have some publishers that recently just punted on production schedules in 2016. So please, think about your production schedule, think about how Newsstand fits into that, and realize that there is a little bit of time between the time it leaves your printing plant and goes to your wholesaler. Ask yourself, what is your Newsstand target? How did you get to that number? Who did you talk to? What sort of research did you do to come up with that number? Don't just pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to put 20,000 copies out in the newsstand, because you're pretty much guaranteeing that you're going to fail if you do that. So really have your research done. How did you get there? What did you do to get that number? And once again, let's go back to these magazines. What is your competition doing on the newsstand? Where are they selling? Do you want to be there? Does it make sense for you to be there? What are they selling in those stores? And again, Modern Luxury Brides, for example, gives away practically all of their copies for free, but they do have distribution in Barnes & Noble stores, but only in select Barnes & Noble stores in the Chicago market. Wedding Guide Chicago decided that they don't really want to compete in downtown, so you'll find them mostly out in the suburbs. So what is your competition doing on the newsstand? Next question, of course, is when. And the question there is, when do you want to go on the newsstand? Now, I know next week would be great, but it takes a little bit of work to get yourself from conception to actually putting the magazine on the newsstand. And it can be done very quickly. I mean, if you're at Time Inc. and we're about to have the, I think it's hockey finals are coming up pretty soon, or basketball finals coming up. You know, those guys can jam something out very quickly. If you're a smaller publisher, it might take you a little bit longer. And the rule of thumb, 90 days, 120 days. Give yourself some time. Make sure you do your research. Make sure you know what it is and how you're going to get there. And this one I hate bringing up, but it's something to think about. A lot of times now we promote and we pay for the space when we launch a magazine. Make sure you have your money available, because if you don't pay for your promotion, you're not going in there. It's gone. It's not going to happen. Also, we talked earlier about your production date. If you pay for a promotion and you don't ship in time to make your on sale date when you're doing your promotion, you just handed your retailer and your wholesaler a lot of money. So something to think about. Ask yourself this question as well. When are you going to be talking about the results? Again, there's still a lot of players in our market. Make sure you understand who these people are, what the responsibilities are, and talk to them. We're nice people, really. I know we have a reputation of being all kinds of other things, but we're actually really nice. And if you ask us questions, we'll give you answers. And they're usually very accurate. So just to review, when you get to this point in your planning stages, have your plan. Make sure everybody knows what they're responsible for and know when you're supposed to go and do it, and pull your circulation person out from underneath their desk. Let's ask the question, where? Where do you want to be displayed? Now, I should point out for the TNG people in the room, that's not your rack. You didn't do that, and I kind of pulled it up because it's kind of a mess. So right on front would be nice, but you really don't want to be on that rack, I don't think. But magazine racks in the main lines are divided usually by category. So make sure you know what category you want your magazine to be in, and make sure that your wholesaler knows that that's where you want to be displayed. If you're a little unsure, have a conversation with them about it and figure it out. Where do you expect to see your magazine? Now, if you're a regional publisher, this is always fun, because all of your advertisers are going to call you and tell you that they went into that store, that Kroger, that Publix, whatever it was, and they didn't see your magazine there. And then you're going to call your newsstand person. You're going to say, all these people are complaining they can't find my magazine. And that person's going to do a little bit of research and say, but the magazine was there. So don't be Eeyore. And don't let your advertisers be Eeyore either, because your magazine not being in that rack actually happens a lot less often than you think. We actually do a pretty good job of getting things to where they're supposed to be. Let's talk about the budget as well, because when are you going to talk about your budget? Where, in the grand scheme of things, is your budget? Hopefully it's not there. What you want to do is ask yourself, where's the money? And you want to ask yourself, where are you going to be making your payments? And one thought I really have is that, again, if you're a regional publication or any sort of publication where advertisers are expecting to see the magazine in a specific retail chain, and you're going to promote in that chain, share the money cross-budget, cross-department. Next thing we can ask ourselves is why, which is sometimes something you ask yourself early in the morning. So why are you going to go on the newsstand? And it's not a trick question. It really isn't. We've talked about some of this already, but you want to go out there because it's because you have visibility. And I often refer to newsstand sales as sort of the front door for the magazine. Because sure, virtually, we send out our newsletters, we have our website, we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have all these things. But now we actually have something that we can show people. We can actually give this to them and say, you know, here's the fruit of all of our labor. And you can actually hold it and it's physical. Maybe it's for the added circulation. And again, when I was working with a publisher who was audited, and we're coming up on audit season again. And a big part of my time during audit season, aside from preparing their statement and kind of wondering how we were going to hit all their targets, a lot of my time was also spent reviewing the distributions, pulling reports that came to my national distributor through Magnet. And we could go to the insights department and say, okay, we're in 3,000 Walmarts. We're in 1,300 Target stores. We're in 150 Hudson Airport stands. And we would compare that to our competition. This is how many copies we sell per store. You know, this is a magazine that's $9.99, and people go out and buy it 4 times a year at $9.99 in all of these stores. So this is something that you can tell your people that you do business with. And yes, if you manage your money properly, you're also going to get paid for this. And you also have bragging rights. As I mentioned, you can tell your people, you can tell the people that you do business with that this is a magazine. If you're national, you can be found in all of these places. If it's a regional publication, we're the #1 selling store in these 2 Barnes & Noble stores right here in town. Or we're the #1 selling store at the checkout in the local IGA or the local Kroger banner that you happen to have in your hometown. So do your homework. Ask a lot of questions. Constantly ask questions. And bother people. Again, we're nice people. Pick up the phone, call us, send us emails. We'll answer your questions. Our business is not nearly as obscure and unusual as we're sometimes advertised. We do business just like everybody else. And unlike a lot of the press that we get, we don't do business like we did 20 or 30 years ago. It's very, very different what we do. There are no stupid questions. But there are questions that maybe you were embarrassed or afraid or didn't want to ask. And if you don't ask them, there's going to be legendary disasters. And in the newsstand world, we tell lots of stories. And we love the stories about the legendary disasters as much as we love the stories about successes. And I'll share a legendary disaster story with you. A colleague and I were working with a fairly large sports publisher, and we noticed that they had an editorial hole. And so for a number of years, we kept presenting to them why they should create this magazine to fill this editorial hole, that there was a market for it, and it didn't make any sense that all of our competitors had this magazine, but we didn't. Finally, one year, they said, okay, here's the print order target, here's some money for promotions, go get them. We worked with our distributors, we worked with the wholesalers, we came up with what I thought was quite possibly one of the best launches ever. Meanwhile, in the production department, they thought that they would save $180 and that they would take this thing that they found on the internet that let them make a UPC code. And so they did a UPC code. Now, to their credit, they did send us the cover. This is the cover we're using, and we said, that looks great. Can you change a couple of things? They said, no, we sent it to the printer already. And we're like, okay. And it turned out that the magazine arrived in the warehouses, and of course the UPC code did not scan. And if your UPC code does not scan, your magazine does not get delivered. And you have to resticker it. And if you have a very large print order, that's very, very expensive. And it does take a day or two or three. And you are going to miss your on sale date. And if you have promotions and you miss your on sale date, then you don't get your promotions. So we didn't have that magazine the next year. Which was kind of, yeah, that was a shame. I was not happy. So let's ask the last question. How? How do you measure results? And again, when I said earlier we do business very differently, this is true. The amount of data that is available to us, and this was mentioned yesterday by the guys at Magnet, the amount of data that is available to us now so that we can review what we're doing and ideally be smarter about it is impressive. When I think about what I had to copy by hand and then type up way back when, farther ago than I really want to admit to, and what I can get now in the course of just one day, it's just phenomenal. And if you use that data in a smart way, you can really target and really come up with some really good ways of fixing your distributions and getting things done in a much more timely manner. So how are you going to measure your results? Think about that. What's important to you? Is sell-through important to you? Is copies sold per store important to you? Is it the revenue per retailer? All of those things, perhaps. How are you going to adjust your targets? What is it you're looking for? Again, is it efficiency? Do you want to put more copies out there? Do you have a certain, unfortunately I have a client has a very specific target that they have to hit, a guaranteed rate base, unfortunately. Sorry, Bo. And we have to hit that number. We have no choice. So we're incredibly inefficient. On the other hand, we hit our targets. So, and how will you get paid? And I bring this up again because you should understand, if you're dealing directly with a wholesaler, how are they paying you? Make sure you understand what it is they need from you in terms of invoicing and those sorts of things. Make sure that you understand when they're going to be paying you. If it's a national distributor, you have some really great stuff you can send to your lawyers there to review and try to figure out how it is and when they're going to be paying you. So you want to know that. So just as a last couple of thoughts, understand the terms of all of the contracts that you're working with. Know what your schedule is for your payment, your production, for everything. Always ask questions. If you're underfunded, I'm very sorry. If you don't have enough money to get yourself through all of this, I'm very sorry to say you will probably fail. Publishers who don't understand how the newsstand works and try to go on the newsstand and treat it as something that's turnkey probably will also fail as well. So I don't mean to say any of that as a downer, but pay attention ultimately to what it is you need to do. So thank you very much for your time. Do you have some time for questions? I don't know if we do.